Michigan making history the wrong way. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love, talking maize and blue with Justin Rowe. Please join him on his audio podcast, Stadium in Maine, and I will bring up his batter. Follow him on Twitter. And, of course, the maize and blue going down to Indiana 38-17. Justin, how you doing today?
Doing well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Let's get to the news of the day first and foremost, because there's a number of significant injuries, both that will carry through the 2020 season and more so the day-to-day, involving a couple offensive linemen and also Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, so Jalen Mayfield, it's still looking like he could be 6 to 8 weeks out, which obviously with a shortened season will take him to the end of the year. I've heard that if Michigan were to maybe have a 5-2 record going into Ohio State and have a shot, he may come back. It's not looking that way for Michigan right now, so I doubt that we ever see Jalen Mayfield in a Michigan uniform again, which is unfortunate. And then the tackle opposite him, Ryan Hayes, has also been quoted as day-to-day. We're not really sure what his injury is, but he is, I think, in better shape than Jalen Mayfield is. And then, as you said, on the opposite side of the ball, Aiden Hutchinson, it sounds like we'll have to have surgery on his leg from an injury that he suffered against Indiana, and it is fractured. So he will be out most likely for the rest of the season. They haven't given him a complete timetable, but you have to imagine he's not going to come back in the next 6 weeks, especially with him being a hopeful high draft pick. So unfortunately, Michigan is, on the offensive line was already young and inexperienced, and now they're going on without those guys, and then less depth on the defensive side too, where Michigan has struggled.
Please like the video if you enjoy what we do here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Comment below on Michigan, the Big Ten, and the nation, and of course subscribe. Hit that bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. All right, let's look at the Indiana game. 38-17 loss there in Bloomington. 38-21. Am I missing up? Yeah, 38-21, 17-point spread against the Hoosiers. All right, first loss for the maize and blue against IU since 1987. I'll give you my quick snapshot from watching every play of the game. I thought the receivers were pretty good. I thought they made some plays, especially on scoring plays. They made some outstanding catches. I thought Milton was not outstanding, but he was fine. I don't think he's the issue for the most part. Does he miss on some throws? Yes. Does he not necessarily know when to run and when not to run? Yes, that comes up. But when you drop back 40 or 45 times a game as a third game starter, that's going to happen. My disappointment for this team is the run blocking and also the running backs. I'm going to put some responsibility on them, although they've proven, especially two of them through a full season, that they are top of the line Big Ten running backs, but 18 carries for 13 yards. Obviously, there are sacks included in that. Need to run the ball better, and that generally falls along the offensive line to the large extent. Why defensive linemen who have as many starts as those guys are jumping off sides continually, I have no idea. And then, of course, the secondary is still an issue, although they faced a much better wide receiver crew in Indiana this week, Justin.
Yeah, I think watching the game in real time, it looked like Indiana was dominating pretty much the whole game. Michigan has now not led in a game since Minnesota in week 1. And so that's concerning. But this week against Indiana, it did look like they were, in control the whole time. And yes, they were. But when I went back and rewatched the game, I actually thought it was a closer game than I originally thought. Without those mistakes that you were just speaking of a defensive lineman jumping off sides and the pass interferences, which obviously has been an issue, the offsides not so much in the past, it's a closer game than we saw on Saturday. And so with the secondary already struggling on one-on-one matchups on the outside on receivers, Michigan's defensive line jumped off sides and gave Indiana free plays so that they could easily go at those corners. And that was a big issue. I mean, the first 2 touchdowns specifically were both on free plays. And so without some of those mistakes, I think this game goes a little bit differently. Do I think Michigan wins? Maybe not, but I think that it's closer, and this defense plays a lot better if that's the case. I also think you have to give your hat off to Indiana. I think they have their best team in a long time now under Tom Allen, and so they haven't. I believe last year was their first winning record in quite some time as well. They're a good team. They're a good defense. That Michael Penix is a great quarterback. He really. I thought Michigan's secondary played better than they did against Michigan State, but Michael Penix still made some great throws. He threw into some tight windows, and their receivers made some great plays as well.
When we look at Don Brown's defense, people have been asking me, a number of people throughout the week or commenting on the live chat, Don Brown should be fired. Don Brown should be fired. Okay, Don Brown has produced top 5 to 10 defenses in the country ever since he got to Michigan. A defensive coordinator who's excelling is not going to be fired. I understand the lapses against Ohio State, against elite talent. Now we're seeing a defense that's performing at maybe a top 40 to 50 level. And I got to think that has a lot to do with the personnel in the back end not being able to cover to the degree to fit his defense.
Yeah, it's more of a personnel issue than I think it is schemes. And everyone has gone at Don Brown on his schemes because he plays generally all man-to-man, and he leaves those corners on the outside on an island. And it's worked in the past because they have Lavert Hill. They have these NFL corners. And he would have had Ambry Thomas this year, which maybe makes a huge difference. Right. And so now he's got young, inexperienced corners, and he hasn't been able to make an adjustment. And so he actually played zone all game against Indiana. And it seemed like whether it was Harbaugh or somebody was forcing him to do that. Hey, Don, you need to make some type of an adjustment here to help these guys out. Well, yes, that's a great thought until you realize that Michigan hasn't practiced zone in ever. Under Don Brown. And so these guys looked pretty lost on a lot of those plays. Like they didn't know exactly where they were supposed to be. They were covering grass a lot of times instead of clinging to receivers once they came into their zone. I didn't think this team looked prepared on the defensive side. And so some of that is Don Brown. Obviously, I think that he was forced to go into the zone more than he wanted to. Obviously, he's a man guy, but I think a lot of it also lies on that front seven. They've, for the first time in Don Brown's regime at Michigan, they've had back-to-back games without any sacks. And so, in order for Don Brown's defense to work, you have to get pressure on the quarterback. And so, you could tell against Michigan State, Rocky Lombardi was very comfortable. Against Indiana, Michael Penix was very comfortable. And when that happens, it allows these receivers to get open. I do think that Don Brown should be on the hot seat now because he's given up over 50 points to Ohio State back-to-back. And when you're at Michigan, that's just unacceptable, the same way that it's unacceptable for Jim Harbaugh to be 0-5 against him right now. So I wouldn't doubt that they are going to try and make a change at defensive coordinator at the end of the year, depending on how things go. But I also think that Don Brown's schemes have worked to an extent up until this year because he's had that personnel. The guys that he's working with, and it is a recruiting issue, are not the same as the guys that he's had in the past. And so Jamon Green and Jalen Perry and Vincent Gray, those guys in the secondary are nothing to be, super excited about. Daxton Hill he's a 5-star guy that's playing at a 5-star level right now. He's really the lone bright spot in that secondary. So maybe these guys develop a little bit and get some experience. A lot of these guys have only had 3, 4, 5 starts in college football. So you can't expect them to be All-Americans right away, I guess. But I think the hope for Don Brown is you keep playing the same type of football, and these guys will get the hang of it moving forward, and hopefully for 2021.
We have a lot of fun on Patreon. Join us there. You could also make a few bucks. 16-4 against the spread last week on my top 25 predictions. So please join us there. Watch parties, exclusive live streams per request, and insider information here at the Voice of College Football. Justin Rose on the line to talk Michigan with a trip to Wisconsin. In regards to this matchup with the Badgers, obviously they have been one of the prime contenders in the Big Ten. We've only seen them play once this year. Depending on their quarterback situation, I would still evaluate them to be the best team in the West. So Michigan at 1-2 is on treacherous ground to really start to catapult toward a ugly record here in 2020. It's going to be a difficult one at the Big House. They don't have the dominant back that they've had. Again, I haven't heard any definitive word about the quarterback situation. Danny Vandenboom would be the fourth guy. Graham Mertz, obviously, was the guy in line after Jack Cohn went down with an injury. Your thoughts about the Badgers, who bring back a load of talent on defense?
Yeah, I think that's the first thing that jumps out to me is no matter what's going on the offensive side of the ball at the quarterback position for Wisconsin, that defense is still pretty damn good, right? And so I think that Michigan's offensive line is really going to struggle. If they struggle against Michigan State and Indiana's defense, and nothing to take away from their defenses, but I don't believe that those two defenses are on the same level as Wisconsin. I think Michigan's offensive line is going to struggle probably even worse than they have. Getting that run game going and then making Joe Milton comfortable and in the pocket to make sure that he can get some passes off. I think that's where I see the big problems for Michigan in this game. And then depending on what happens on offense for Wisconsin, who's at quarterback, we don't know if it's Graham Mertz or Vandenboom, but I still believe they're going to employ the exact same thing that Indiana and Michigan State have, which is make sure you protect that guy in the backfield and then let him throw out and challenge those corners. So it's starting to feel like Groundhog Day here, but we keep saying the same thing about challenging those corners, and it keeps happening. So I don't see any reason for Wisconsin to do anything different. And if you're talking about Graham Mertz being back, if he is able to play on Saturday, and it is a night game, so maybe they kind of finagle that to be an extra couple hours or day that he's able to quarantine or whatever you want to call it. Graham Mertz could have a field day with this secondary, so it could get ugly quickly for Michigan. But what's interesting to me is Michigan opened up with a spread of -3. They were favored. They are favored in this game already. So I think Vegas is taking a look at this as nobody knows what Wisconsin's going to come out. They haven't practiced. They haven't played. Nobody's really sure. They've only seen one game against Illinois. And so it'll be interesting to see. But even with Wisconsin not playing much, I still don't have a ton of confidence on either side of the ball for Michigan here in this matchup on prime time in the Big House.
Paul Chryst' comment at his news conference on Monday is, quote, he's starting the process of coming back, alluding to Mertz. His tests are all done. I think he'll be able to have some practice. We'll see if it's enough practice time. You don't know that. Each guy is different, so forth and so on. So very non-committal out of Paul Chryst, but I got to think if Graham Mertz is able to play, he's going to play. 5 touchdown passes, 20 for 21 against Illinois, and that backed up what everyone thought of him coming into the process. So Michigan and Wisconsin, this offensive line. So when you rewatched the game and now maybe no Ryan Hayes, no Jalen Mayfield for sure, they got to get the run game going. And like I mentioned off the top, Charbonnet and Haskins' productive seasons last year. I don't know how much would be the backs versus the offensive line versus the play calling possibly.
Yeah, and I'll start with the play calling is we saw Josh Gaddis try to run inside zone a lot versus Michigan State and have nearly zero success. And then Michigan comes out against Indiana, and the first play of the game is an inside zone for -1 yards. And so I'm sure for Michigan fans out there, that was pretty frustrating to see. And they ran it again and again, and it wasn't nearly as much as versus Michigan State, but it still didn't have any success. And so I think that Michigan fans are hoping to have Josh Gaddis get a little bit more creative, get his running backs out there in space. What I would like to see from that running back room is, I know it's talented. It's 4 deep, right? And so you got a lot of talented guys, but I don't think it's easy for these guys to get in a rhythm if you've got that many guys rotating in. Hassan Haskins, who arguably has been their leading rusher and best running back in 2021, maybe even in 2020, didn't get a carry until the second quarter on Saturday. So I don't think it's easy for a guy to warm up, get ready to go, and then sit on the sideline for 30 minutes in that first quarter, and then try and get a feel for the game and get hyped up and get ready to go to make some moves on offense. So I would hope to see that Josh Gaddis maybe get two guys in a rotation, go with them, deal with the other guys being pissed off about not playing, and then just kind of go with it, because what he's doing right now is not working. Again, that offensive line is going to struggle, but I think that they can use Ben Mason if they want to in some different ways and be unique about how they block, instead of just trying to go overpower the other team and go one-on-one there. Use like we talked about when they went against Minnesota, they did some trap blocks and things like that. One thing I was really intrigued by and impressed was Joe Milton in the third quarter on Saturday, third and early into the fourth, before he threw that final interception, or final two interceptions, he was moving the ball. He got the ball to Ronnie Bell. He looked more comfortable. He hit a deep ball. He had one deep ball that should have been a touchdown, and he overthrew him again. And unfortunately, he didn't connect with Roman Wilson on that one either. But I think that he's starting to feel more comfortable and get into a rhythm. And if Michigan does have to throw the ball 45 times in a game to win, I think he's feeling like, okay, I can do that now. Whereas against Michigan State, they were not ready for that one bit. And that was why they struggled so much, because he wasn't ready to throw the ball 50 times, which is what he did. So I think that going forward, they're going to keep doing that, and because that's going to be their only option, and he's going to feel more comfortable throwing the ball and start slinging it. And I believe that he's going to start connecting on more of those deep balls that could help them win the games, because that's what's happened against Michigan, is they've lost the game nearly on all deep balls or 20-yard passes.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love each and every day with the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. You see the call below. Please join us on Amazon in regards to, hey, Christmas is coming, shop Amazon, and you might as well use the link in the description section below and help us build the channel. Join us on Patreon for a whole lot of fun, plus 16-4 against the spread this week. All right, Justin, Jim Harbaugh. Please explain to all of us, because the comments probably inundate you 10 times more than they inundate me almost on a daily basis. Fire him. He's got to be gone. Please explain to us why he will not be fired in 2020. And then go into 2021. You can only conjecture in regards to what the benchmark is going to be for the administration, but how you would handle the situation and what your goals for his hot seat status would be in 21.
Well, first of all, I think it is pretty funny. We've done a few of these now, and the one where we did talk about firing Jim Harbaugh has about quadruple the amount of views as our other one. So Jim gets the clicks, especially when he's on the hot seat. But yeah, I think that the whole fan base is already looking at who can Michigan go get to replace Jim Harbaugh. They're talking about Matt Campbell. They're talking about Luke Fickell. I've even heard Urban Meyer out there, which is, I don't think, realistic in the least bit, but fans love to talk about things like that. So the fan base is in one spot where they're 100% ready to be done with the Jim Harbaugh experiment. Well, the administration is not on that same level. They are sounding, from everything I've heard from different writers and media and people in the athletic department, Ward Manuel, the athletic director at Michigan, has no reason to fire Jim Harbaugh at the moment. He is not even having that conversation of who is going to replace Jim Harbaugh. He still believes he is the guy. He believes that he still can turn it around. He believes that this is just kind of a down year, and he still gives Michigan the best shot to win Big Ten titles and beat Ohio State, which to me, and you could ask a lot of fans this, and their reaction to that is, you're crazy. What gives you reason from year five and a half years of Jim Harbaugh to believe that he could really be the guy and he's ready to get over the hump and beat Ohio State. And I think I've seen regression throughout his 5 years. You could argue that his best year was 2016, is year 2. 2018, he had a great year until he got whomped by Ohio State in the final game of the year. But this administration seems like they are still on board with Jim Harbaugh. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is the financial situation. I believe we've talked about this in the past, but Michigan, just like any other university, because of the pandemic, had to lose a lot of money because of college football being canceled. They haven't had fans for any of their games. It's a shortened season, so not as much money coming in from TV. They've had to force pay cuts in their athletic department and lay off some people. So I feel like Ward Manuel is sitting in his office thinking, how am I going to buy out Jim Harbaugh's contract worth $10 million or so, and then look at all my other employees and say, hey, you keep taking your pay cut. So that's number one, the number one reason for me. The other reasons I believe is recruiting. They don't want to take a dip in recruiting here and start all over. It is hard to start all over with a new coach. And Jim Harbaugh has produced some really good recruiting classes. They have J.J. McCarthy coming in, who's one of the top quarterbacks in the nation, 5-star. I think they're looking at that and saying, well, I don't want to lose that guy because he could be the game changer. He could be our Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. So that's one thing they're looking at. I also think that they just they believe that Harbaugh is a Michigan man. They keep talking about they want somebody in here that is a Michigan man, and some people have different perceptions of what that means. Some people think, oh, that means that he has to have ties to Michigan, and then others, and I think this is the more true case, is a Michigan man means he has the values of Michigan. He's not willing to be, I don't want to put this out there, but an SEC guy that is, willing to get dirty and drop the bags and things like that. It's a Michigan man that is, values academics up in Ann Arbor. So that's what they're looking for, and they still feel like Jim Harbaugh is that guy. He has the love for the university, and they don't see, and I understand this. Who out there do you think could give Michigan a better shot immediately than Jim Harbaugh? And so I believe that he has struggled, and maybe it is a time for a change of scenery. But I think that Jim Harbaugh is still, to the administration, in the administration's eyes, gives them the best chance to win right now, which is kind of where they're at. I also think on the other side, Jim Harbaugh is not getting many offers at the moment. I wouldn't imagine. I don't know this. I haven't talked to Jim or any NFL teams, but I don't believe that any NFL teams are knocking down his door to try and get him to come play for them. And the same for other college football programs. So they're both pretty happy still with where they're at, which is kind of crazy to think, because the rest of the fan base and us and the media are thinking it's got to be over with. They got to make a move. So interestingly enough, that's still where they are at in middle of the way through 2020.
Justin, last time we talked, you addressed the fire, the passion, the fight that you saw in Jim Harbaugh, and we all did, his first few years at Michigan, and how that has waned through the years. Of course, that's an opinion. That's just perception. We can't get into the heart and the mind of the man to understand his variation of incentive or motivation or work ethic. It seems to all be there, aside from, yes, I certainly agreed with your analysis of just the observation on the sideline and the day-to-day rhetoric coming from him versus what it used to be. There was a play it was one of the many jumping off sides by a defensive lineman, and I thought it was Kwity Paye. He came to the sideline, and in response to either Gray or Green's delivering a decent pass breakup, it wasn't a great play. The ball was late. It was underthrown. He was right there. He broke it up. He did his job. Harbaugh went nuts just to try to fire him up. And I understood, hey, this kid has gotten beaten down for 3 games. You're trying to lift his spirits. Hey, say you made a play. Keep it up. You can do it. Quiddy Pay came to the sideline after jumping off sides. And here's a veteran. I could understand first game, second game, third game, freshman. Okay, you know, this is what you need to do. You gave him a little pat on the rear and just kind of hugged him almost. And it just seems like an odd response to a veteran who just, I don't know exactly who was jumping off sides. I know that it was the collection of the defensive ends mostly for veterans to be doing that again and again, and for him to respond in that way seemed a bit strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, I look back, just like we talked about it, I look back at 2015 Jim Harbaugh, or 2016, or even going back to the San Francisco 49ers, and he wasn't giving anybody a hug, not even when they got a touchdown, let alone when they're making a huge mistake like that. And so there was also a play out there where it was a questionable pass interference call on Michigan, and he argued for, I don't know, 10 seconds or so. But 4 or 5 years ago, I really think that was one of those moments where he's ripping off the coat, chucking the clipboard, chucking his whistle that's around his neck still. And we just don't see that. And so it's almost like this attitude of, it's okay, you got it, you'll get him next time type of thing that he has towards these players now. And I don't know if he feels like he has to do that to keep them on board with him, maybe, and so that he can keep the locker room, or what it is. But I saw the same thing, and it was like, would you ever see Nick Saban giving a guy a hug after he jumped off sides, or Dabo Swinney, or Ryan Day, even Urban Meyer? You know, those guys, the best of the best, which we've thought that Jim Harbaugh was up there as far as football minds and coaches and CEOs and everything like that. He's now, it just looks like he's turning soft. And again, maybe he's in the locker room afterwards or at practice this week, you know, going crazy and being really hard on him. It's hard for us to know that. But it does seem like on the sideline in a game where they were still in that game at some times, and it seemed like he was okay with mistakes being made, and then really celebrating, like you said, the Vincent Gray's pass breakups because he has 1 every 10, and so it seems like the standard for him of his players has been lowered as far as him congratulating and him punishing them.
Justin Rose, Stadium in Maine podcast, joins us on a weekly basis. Justin, we appreciate you stopping by with your information, insight, and perspective on Michigan football.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm sure we'll be back next week. Could be an ugly situation at 1-4 for Michigan, but maybe they'll be 2-2. Who knows?